learners, welcome to part 2 of the short story The Fun They Had, prescribed by the NCERT for class 9. In this video, we are going to read the second part of the story. I'll explain it to you along with the difficult words and their meanings. In the second half, titled Analysis, we are going to discuss the setting of the story, analyze the major events and themes that emerge. So let's begin. In the first part, we saw how Tommy found a book in his attic. He tells Margie that it is about the schools in the olden days. Margie scornfully remarks that there is no need to write books about schools because schools aren't good. She doesn't like schools at all. Now, let's move to the second part of the story. So, she said to Tommy, "Why would anyone write about school?" Tommy looked at her with very superior eyes. Superior means higher in rank. So he looks at her with superior sort of eyes. He looks at her as if she doesn't know anything, right? Because it's not our kind of school, stupid. This is the old kind of school that they had hundreds and hundreds of years ago. Margie was hurt. Well, I don't know what kind of school they had all that time ago. She read the book over his shoulder for a while and then said, "Anyway, they had a teacher." So Margie says to Tommy, "Why would anyone write about school in the first place?" And Tommy says, "Oh my God, you don't know anything. They're writing about the school that existed hundreds of years ago, and it's not the kind of school that you and I know today, right?" And so she starts reading the book over his shoulder, right? Look at the picture. She's reading it over his shoulder. Sure, they had a teacher, but it wasn't a regular teacher. It was a man. So she says, "Yeah, you keep on saying that it wasn't the same as our school, but they also had a teacher, right?" So he says, "Sure, they had a teacher, but it wasn't a regular teacher." Here's the picture of a regular teacher, the kind of teachers that you see in schools today, right? So he says, "It was a man." A man? How could a man be a teacher? So Margie is quite surprised. She says, "How could a man be a teacher?" Well, he just told the boys and girls things and gave them homework and asked them questions. A man isn't smart enough. Margie is doubting the whole idea of having a man as a teacher. So she says, "A man isn't smart enough." "Sure he is. My father knows as much as my teacher." So, this boy, Tommy, says, "Sure, a man can be smart enough. My father also knows as much as my teacher. My father is also smart." He can't. A man can't know as much as a teacher. He knows almost as much, I betcha. Betcha means I bet you. So Tommy says, "I bet you a man can know as much as a teacher." But Margie doesn't accept the idea that a man could be as knowledgeable, as smart as a machine could be. Because in her mind, a teacher is only a mechanical sort of a teacher. She's finding it very difficult to imagine a man as a teacher. Margie wasn't prepared to dispute that. Dispute means to argue over something, to disagree, right? So she wasn't ready to dispute that. Dispute what? Dispute the fact that Tommy's father is very smart. So she did not argue about it. She said, "I wouldn't want a strange man in my house to teach me." So she says, "I don't want a strange man in my house to teach me." Tommy screamed with laughter. He keeps on laughing at her. Why is he laughing? Because he thinks that Margie doesn't know anything. "You don't know much, Margie. The teachers didn't live in the house. They had a special building and all the kids went there." Look at the picture. It's the picture of a regular school, the kind of school that we know, right? So in the future, Tommy tells her that the teacher didn't have to come to their house. Like our mechanical teacher lives with us and he teaches us. It doesn't have to be like that. There used to be a building which was called a school and the kids used to go there. Sure, if they were and all the kids learned the same thing. So Margie asks a question. She asks him whether the kids learned the same thing. Sure, if they were the same age. So Tommy tells her if the kids were the same age, they were divided according to their age and they were put in separate groups and they used to learn the same thing. Look at what Margie says next. But my mother says a teacher has to be adjusted to fit the mind of each boy and girl it teaches, and that each kid has to be taught differently. So Margie's idea of school is very different. She says that her mother has told her that the mechanical teacher has to teach every kid differently because they should be adjusted to the needs of the kid. Just the same, they didn't do it that way then. If you don't like it, you don't have to read the book. So he says it doesn't matter. They didn't do it that way then. They did not, prefer individualized education like you do today. So if you don't like it, you don't have to read the book. I didn't say I don't like it. Margie said quickly. She wanted to read about those funny schools. So what does Margie think about the schools? She thinks that they are funny because they are very different from the schools that she knows, right? They weren't nearly half finished when Margie's mother called. Margie, school. Margie looked up. Not yet, Mama. Now, said Mrs. Jones. And it's probably time for Tommy too. So her mother calls her for school, and look at Margie. She's not ready to go to school. She says, not right now, Mama. But her mama says that it is the right time and it is probably the time for Tommy to go too. Margie said to Tommy, can I read the book some more with you after school? So she requests Tommy to read the book with him. Maybe, he said nonchalantly. Nonchalantly is very casually, not very formally. So he says, maybe you can read the book with me. He walked away whistling, the dusty old book tucked beneath his arm. So he walked away with his book in his toe, his book tucked beneath his arm, right? Margie went to the schoolroom. So she goes to the schoolroom. Look at Margie. She's sitting here with a device and there's a robot which is her teacher, and she goes, this is her schoolroom. It was right next to her bedroom. So she didn't have to go to an actual school. She just moved a room which was next to her bedroom. And the mechanical teacher was on and waiting for her. It was already on, right? It was always on the same time every day except for Saturday and Sunday, because her mother said little girls learned better if they learned at regular hours. So this robotic teacher waited for her at the same time except for Saturday and Sunday. Right? The screen was lit up and it said, today's arithmetical lesson is on addition of proper fractions. So they are doing fractions today. Please insert yesterday's homework in the proper slot. So the teacher asks Margie to insert her homework in the proper slot. Slot means proper space which is made specifically for something. Margie did so with a sigh. So Margie did so with a sigh. Sigh is like when you breathe very deeply when you're not very happy about something, right? So you're like, she did that. She was thinking about the old schools they had when her grandfather's grandfather was a boy. So she keeps on thinking, she's thinking about those schools when her grandfather's grandfather was a little boy. She's not really interested in the lesson, this shows. All the kids from the whole neighborhood came, laughing and shouting in the schoolyard, sitting together in the classroom, going home together at the end of the day. They learned the same thing so they could help one another on homework and talk about it. And the teachers were people. Look at the 3 dots. This shows that, she keeps on thinking about it and she gets lost in the thought. The mechanical teacher was flashing on the screen. When we add the fractions 1 by 2 and 1 by 4, ... This shows that the mechanical teacher was flashing fractions and how to add them on the screen, but Margie is paying no attention. She's lost in her own world. Margie was thinking about how the kids must have loved it in the old days. She was thinking about the fun that they had. So she is busy thinking about what fun it would be to go to such a school where her grandfather's grandfather had once gone to, right? Let's move to the analysis. Let's discuss the setting first. Like I already told you, the story is set in the future. The date which is mentioned in the very second line of the story is May 17, 2155. This is the date that Margie mentions in her diary. So this is approximately 135 years from now. This is the setting of the story. It's a futuristic story. It's a scientific fiction, right? The the author is imagining how the world will be in the future. Now we will discuss the major events in the story, and we will pick up sentences from the short story which tell us something about that event, then we will analyze those statements, right? Tommy finds a book. This is the first event that happens in the story. Tommy finds a book. So this is Margie's statement. Today Tommy found a real book. Look at the exclamation mark. Her amazement shows that the books are no more considered essential. They've lost their importance and have been replaced by technology. Because Margie is so surprised to see a book, she's so amazed to see a book, we feel that the books have lost their importance. The kind of importance that they have now might not be there in the future, right? When you're through with the book, you just throw it away, I guess. So this is a statement made by Tommy. He doesn't understand what to do with the book when you are through with it, when you have read it completely. Books are seen as carriers of limited information. Limited means something which has its limit. So it is not unlimited like the telebooks that they mention. So books are seen as carriers of limited information. In the story, we see an excess of information which loses its significance. So it seems as if Margie and Tommy are living in an age where there is excessive amount of information. There are millions of telebooks stored on their television, and they feel that one book which has a very limited information, which does not explore a lot of areas, is sort of irrelevant to them. The aesthetic purposes such as relaxation, personal development, memoir keeping, as the records of history and culture, etc., fulfilled by the books are not taken into consideration. So like books are not only the carriers of information, right? Some books you just read for relaxation. Some books are written for as memoirs. Whenever you visit some place, you write a book to help you remind of the memories that you have, right? All of these purposes, books as a keeper, as a recorder of history, all of these things are not taken into consideration, because both these kids think that books are useless, and these functions which are fulfilled by the books are not taken into consideration at all. Throwing away of books shows that they are seen as a disposable item, which is unnecessary. So he says that I don't know what to do with the books. Maybe you just throw them away after reading. So they have no idea of preserving things, of saving anything for posterity. Like we have manuscripts now dating back to the 13th century, to the 14th century. That's how we know about what happened in the history. But in this setting, in this story, these kids are not interested to know what happened in the history, right? She said, "Where did you find it?" He says, "In my house, in the attic." So the book was found in the attic, and this symbolizes its lost importance in the age of technology. So because books are taken over by technology has replaced books rather. So the books have lost their symbolic meaning, and the books have also lost their importance. So it was found in the attic. Now attic is a place where you keep everything that is extra, right? So it's not a very nice place to keep things in. So if the book is found in the attic, it means that it was considered as something not useful. Margie's mother calls the country inspector. This is the second event that we are going to discuss. Her mother had shaken her head sorrowfully and sent for the country inspector. So her mother gets tired because the robot keeps on giving her difficult geography tests, so she calls for the country inspector. Now this shows that although considered supreme, a machine still requires the expertise of a human being to repair it. So the machine, although is geared according to the needs of the girl, but it still requires a man, a person, a human being to repair it. You require a human being to repair a machine, however good that machine might be, however useful it might be. It shows, however superior machines become, they are still created by humans, therefore could not replace them completely. So in this time in the future, even when the machines are really powerful and the machines are really set according to the needs of the humans, but humans are still superior in that sense, because the only people who can repair these machines are human beings, right? The inspector had smiled after he was finished and patted her head. He smiled at her and gave her an apple. Then he took the teacher apart. And he patted Margie's head again. So there are two instances in which he pats Margie's head and gives her an apple and is kind to her. The inspector, a human being, is more kind to the girl than the mechanical teacher. So we've seen how she hates her mechanical teacher. She wishes him to just go away, to disappear. And the inspector, on the other hand, shows what a human connection could do, how kind a human being could be. He said to her mother, "It's not the little girl's fault, Mrs. Jones. Actually, the overall pattern of her progress is quite satisfactory." So he identifies the girl's potential, which the mechanical teacher, who is designed for that job, couldn't do. This again shows that human connections are irreplaceable. So this man, who is the country inspector, identifies the girl's potential, and he's a better judge at determining how good she is, how well she is doing. And this was the major job of the mechanical teacher, which the mechanical teacher, of course, could not do properly. Right? Let's move on to the next event. It's not an event really, but it is a relationship that we are going to explore. The relationship between Margie and her teacher. So there are two statements which I have picked up. But my mother says a teacher has to be adjusted to fit the mind of each boy and girl it teaches, and that each kid has to be taught differently. Margie went to the schoolroom. It was right next to her bedroom, and the mechanical teacher was on and waiting for her. It was always on at that time, every day. The future teacher is programmed to promote individualized education. The school is always accessible. So you see how her school is not very far away. It's just the next room. So it is always accessible. She can go to the teacher anytime and read and study anytime. Right? And the teacher is programmed in such a way so as to give the girl individualized education. Her mother especially says that each mechanical teacher should be adjusted so as to fit the mind of the child that it teaches. The mechanical teacher had been giving her test after test in geography, and she had been doing worse and worse. The geography sector was geared a little too quick. So even though personalized, the robot commits errors and couldn't judge its students' capability. Errors that couldn't be identified by the machine could only be identified by a human being. So even though the machine, it is ironical, right, that the machine was geared specifically to identify the child's strengths and weaknesses and then base the education on that. However, because this machine had a problem, it could not identify the child's weaknesses and strengths, so it kept on giving her higher level assignments, and it was an error on the machine's part. And this error, which could not be identified by the machine itself, it could be only identified by a human being. So it is kind of ironical how it happened, right? The very machine that is based on personalized education could not personalize the education for that child. Margie had hoped he wouldn't know how to put it together again. There it was again, large and black and ugly with a big screen. The part she hated the most was the slot where she had to put homework and test papers. Margie was disappointed. She had been hoping they would take the teacher away altogether. So both these sentences are said by or thought by Margie, and because she hated the teacher, she did not want it to come back. She hoped that the repairman would take the robot away forever, right? Even though geared to her specific needs, Margie hates the robotic teacher, although it is programmed in such a way so that the child gets the best education. She just hates the kind of education that it provides, right? Let's move on to the last theme, which is Margie and her thoughts about school. Margie was scornful. School? What's there to write about school? I hate school. Now, another instance, why would anyone write about school? The third one, Margie's mother called. Margie, school. Margie looked up. Not yet, Mama. All of these instances show that the mere mention of the term school makes Margie mad with anger. She gets very angry and she doesn't like school at all. She doesn't feel connected to her school at all. There is no connection that she feels with her teacher or her school or with the education system in general, right? She hates school. A man? How could a man be a teacher? A man isn't smart enough. A man can't know as much as a teacher. Margie has no confidence on human capabilities. She doesn't understand that a person could be as smart as a machine. She feels that humans are not knowledgeable enough, right? And she feels that humans cannot store as much information as a machine can, which is true. So there could be a lot of information stored in a machine, but kind of analysis, but the kind of knowledge that a person, that a human being could have, is not possible in a machine. But Margie doesn't realizes it, maybe because she equates education with information, right? So she has no confidence, and this also shows that she feels that human beings are somehow less than machines, right? Margie was thinking about how the kids must have loved it in the old days. She was thinking about the fun that they had. She was thinking about the old schools they had when her grandfather's grandfather was a boy. So she is finding it very hard to concentrate on the studies while the teacher is busy teaching her. She cannot concentrate. She keeps on wondering what it would be like to go to a traditional school. Technology, right. So although the teacher is trying to do its best, trying to follow an individualized educational plan for the child, but the child is still not interested. This shows that only programming education in such a way that it will suit your students might not be the only thing that you need to do. There needs to be a special human connection like there is between human teachers and students, right? Technology promotes social distance between humans. So this is another theme that comes out because the world is so technologically advanced in this story. The kids have a sort of a physical distance, a social distance between them, just like the social distance that we are introduced to during this COVID era. Now everybody is studying in their homes, nobody is going to school, nobody is talking to each other, as in talking face to face to each other. So this is what technology does to you, right? Let's move on to the major theme. Let's discuss the major themes that emerge. The first is education in the future. We've already discussed this in the first activity that we did. If you haven't seen the video, go to the first video. I'll link it down in the description and in the video as well. We did an activity where we thought about how the schools are going to be, how the education system is going to be in the future. So what are the changes that we can expect, the future that we can expect, and the author also expected and explored in his story, which was written way back in 1951, was a robotic teacher, telebooks, which we today very fondly call e-books. So no school building, personalized sort of education, which has become possible during 2019 only. No need to go to 2155. Today you're sitting at your home, you're watching this video, you're studying right now. This is the very example of what Isaac Asimov once thought would be possible, would happen. So this is happening right now in 2019. You don't even know to need to go to 2155. Punch code assignments and individualized teaching, right? So these are all the changes in the education system, the kind of changes that Isaac Asimov explores in his story. The second theme that emerges is technology and its impact on us. The story explores how technology leads to lack of social connections, how the girl feels disconnected with the robot, and how much she likes the connection with the country inspector, the person, the human being, right? Even though the mechanical teacher imparts individualized instruction, there is no personal connection between teacher and Margie, and that is one thing that is lost as we lose the schools that we have today, as we become more and more dependent on technology. We lose the kind of human connection that we have, the kind of relationships that students and teachers have between them, right? The last thing that the author explores is the importance of books. So I already told you the books are seen as an outdated item fit for throwing away after being read once. This shows how we are slowly ignoring the importance of books altogether. So there used to be a time when there used to be only books. Now you have e-books, you have PDFs, you have other sort of electronic media which are replacing books, day by day. What we are forgetting today is that books are those resources which bring pleasure to you, right? There is an aesthetic sense which is related to books, but we are slowly losing out on that, and maybe there will come a time when we will completely ignore books and not depend on them and forget what books were in the first place. So these were the main themes. I hope you liked the video. Thank you for watching.